Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. I am your host, Christy Haberman. I am glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of our community. A few disclaimers before we get started. I am a licensed therapist. However, this podcast is not to be considered mental health therapy or counseling. It is for entertainment purposes only and is not associated with my counseling practice, Christy Haberman Counseling Services. Thanks for showing up. Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. This is Christy Haberman and Kai the Wonder Dog. You can hear her snoring in the background. Today is January 2nd. It's the start of a new year. And it's a bittersweet start to the new year. This will be my 12th year on Earth without Christopher. So it's been a decade since he died. And I think of all of life that has passed that he never got to experience. It makes me really quite sad. I don't really celebrate New Year's. I did see lots of posts and memes, as they call them, of people posting about how it's so hard to go into the next year knowing that your loved one won't go into the next year with you. And it is. Every year that it goes by, it gets, in my mind, a little bit harder. I don't know where this idea that it got easier came from. Or maybe that was just the wish of the people around us that somehow it got easier. And it doesn't. It does not get easier. It gets different, but I wouldn't say that it's easier. I was talking with my husband about it today and started to get teary-eyed. And it's been a long time since I got teary-eyed talking about Christopher. But we went to the cemetery yesterday. We had a couple of days where the snow melted and the roads were cleared. And I went to the cemetery and we looked around and we had a huge snowstorm. So we had a huge snowstorm right before Christmas. And then we had another one, 2 right in a row, that closed down all the roads, minus 50 wind chill. And so we couldn't get to the cemetery. And I thought I was doing okay with not getting to the cemetery till I actually went to the cemetery. And some people had made it out. There was, I think we counted 5 graves with flowers on them. And now for our area, that's unusual because we have one of the few cemeteries where you can leave stuff all year round. And so to only have 4 or 5 gravestones have Christmas ornaments on it is an example of how the weather really impacts how we grieve here in South Dakota. So I didn't get to do my regular Christmas rituals, which is just really kind of heartbreaking. So the mood that I was in already was kind of sad. And then I saw this meme on Facebook. And it's hold on to the love, not the loss. And then I felt this sense of shame. I don't know if this happens to the rest of you. And maybe shame's not the right feeling, but I had this like twinge or this thought that I'm doing it wrong, right? That after 12 years, I still miss my son. And that somehow I was doing it wrong. So I was defective because I miss Chris. And that there's some magical formula out there that will make me feel better about this, or make it so that I can remember him and not miss him. And I don't know that that's possible. For my own sake, so back to the story. And I did make that comment, which was, I don't know how not to miss Chris and not feel that loss so acutely. So I thought, you know what? Let's do some research. When I have a question, I am the first to get on Google Master. That's what I call it, Google Master. Google Master will give you just about any information that you want. So it was Eva Longoria that actually said the quote. Supposedly, that's who it's attributed to. And it was on a podcast called The Conversation. So, of course, I Google it. And it said Eva Longoria on divorce. I'm like, what? Divorce? This quote was said about somebody that was going through a divorce? I'm like, there's a huge difference between divorce and death. So, of course, if that person is still walking the earth and they still have a presence, right? They still have a presence. I have people that I know in my life that I don't have a relationship with that still walk this earth. It doesn't even compare, does not even compare to the death of someone. So I bring this up to talk about several different things. One, not all losses are the same. We have to get that message out there that you cannot compare the loss of a divorce, a loss of a relationship, a loss of a job to the death of someone. And you most certainly cannot compare the death of a child to the death of someone that has lived 80 or 90 years. Both of those experiences of grief are different. Just like the grief over the loss of a relationship is different. There's different things that you experience when you go through a divorce, where it is possible to hang on to the love. And so once again, it's another example of how people grab onto what they think is a solution to this never-ending pain of child loss, and they say, "Oh, if I hold on to the love and I ignore the fact that I hurt so bad because my child or my husband or my sibling died, then I'll be okay." Because isn't that where we all want to be, is back to being okay? I would love to go back to being okay. And I just come to this realization that I'll never be the okay that I was before. I'm a different okay, but I'm not that okay. And so there's this message out there that we should somehow ignore the loss. So I'm trying to imagine how that would work with my son, Christopher. Okay, so, and I've heard of people doing this. I could pretend like Christopher was living somewhere else and I just never had any contact with him. Okay. That'd be quite hurtful, actually. Because even in death, I still maintain a relationship with him. Okay, so that's not going to work for me. I do experience the joy of memories with Christopher, but I'm still sad. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with being sad. Like, I'm almost getting to the point where I don't believe in toxic positivity anymore. Where toxic positivity is when something bad happens to you, You look at the lesson, not the effects of the bad thing. Really, what lesson is there? What lesson is there in that Christopher died? Not sure. I didn't have the best childhood. What lesson is there in that? There wasn't one for me. I was a child. I was totally dependent on the people around me to provide a stable environment. That's not on me. Christopher dying, his choice to smoke, drink, not go to the doctor for a year. And now when I'm talking chronic alcoholism and I'm talking numerous packs of cigarettes a day, and if you don't know, white males are more prone to Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer. They're heavy drinkers and heavy smokers. But we also had a history of blood cancer in the family. But those were his choices. Like, why would there be a lesson in there for me? That's toxic positivity. That's taking what I believe is our desire to own it, so to speak, to put the blame back onto the parents that this bad thing happened, or back on the person. And sometimes bad things just happen to bad people. It's not that you're bad, just bad things happen. But we want to believe we control the bad things. And I think this is the thing that where religion sells a false bill of goods, is they convince you that if you live your life according to the rules of someone else, the rules dictated down to you, most often by men, and that you're continually striving to be to this place that's supposed to be better than this place. Never mind the emotional damage that might cause. And I think it's a very similar concept when they say, oh, learn the lesson from the loss. What lesson is there? How about we are just humans and we have these full range of emotions? We have sadness, we have happiness, we have so many things. And we have to allow ourselves to feel all of them. Every single one of them. And it is painful. I spent years in tremendous pain. And if you're one of those people that feels your pain physically, your emotional pain physically, I'm right there with you. Right there with you. And the mental anguish, the blaming yourself, the I woulda, coulda, shouldas that haunt you at night. So how fair is it that someone just casually says something, doesn't put it in context, who has no idea what our experiences are, says, here, this applies to death. And maybe with people that have lived 70, 80 years, maybe there's less regret, but I doubt it. But so much about the loss of a child is about what they didn't experience, what they missed out on life. They didn't even really get a life. And there's a sadness involved in that. It's a life cut too short. It's a life not lived. And that's part of where the sadness comes from. It's because they didn't have a life. They didn't get to experience life. They didn't get to experience the things that we get to experience. And that makes me very, very sad. So it's the new year, so it's bittersweet. Bittersweet. So it's interesting that this quote came along Or maybe it's more interesting that it made me feel bad thinking that I wasn't doing this grief thing right. And I'd really like to know from the rest of you, do you see these memes and sometimes think you're not doing grief right? Because that's the message I get. And maybe that's just unique to me. And I see other people out there saying, I can help you recover. I can help you recover. I can make you feel better. Can you? Maybe our goal shouldn't be to feel better. Maybe our goal should be that we learn to sit with our grief. We learn to honor our grief. Because in honoring the loss, I'm also honoring myself. I don't have to pretend that I'm not in as much pain as I am in. I don't have to wear a mask and say, hey, let's go get drunk because it's New Year's Eve and we all want to party. I don't have to do those things. I don't have to try to keep up with the next door neighbor because their kid bought a new car, got a new career. You know, those things matter. Those things matter. At Christmas time, my dad showed me a picture of my brother with all of his family around. And he goes, oh, he has all of his kids home. Dad, are you thinking about the fact that we're missing one? Do you think about that? And I don't think he does. I don't think it occurs to him that a day filled with family and dinner and is sad. I don't think it even occurs to him. It occurs to us. And I don't really talk about it. My granddaughter is 7 years old and very astute young lady. I cussed in the car the other day and I was getting upset about work and she says to me, are you upset at me? I'm like, oop, I better knock it off because I have a very empathic granddaughter. She gets that from my side of the family. We're very empathic people. So I had to be quiet. But it was good for me. I needed not to be venting anyway. Work needs to be left at work. That's where it belongs. Not at home when I'm out with my granddaughter. But anyway, back to the meme. So when you see these things on Facebook or Instagram, and the message doesn't seem quite right, or as it did with me, it triggered some feelings. Now, those feelings are probably some post-traumatic trauma feelings. I'm sure you guys have heard about the scapegoat. 100% in my family, I was a scapegoat. Something went wrong, it was my fault. I was always doing it wrong. So that's a childhood thing. And it's not unusual in the terms of psychology or mental health that impacts every experience I have throughout the rest of my life. So I might be prone to thinking that is my fault. So if you get into these situations where something like triggers you, do your research, figure it out. Say, should I listen to this person? Like Eva Longoria, is your experience of loss greater than mine? No, it's not. Her experience of loss is different, but it's not better or greater than mine. Her opinion is not greater or better than mine. It's just an opinion. And just like the opinions I put out in this podcast, I was talking too much, did a little bit of coughing there. So just like in this podcast, They're just my opinions. They're not better than someone else's, or I'm not a grief expert. I am just a grieving mom trying to make my way through this experience of grief and hoping that something I say will make a difference for someone else. And I say it over and over again, and I'll probably say it in every podcast, and you may get tired of hearing it. But when I first lost my son, more than anything, I wanted to know what to expect, what it was like. I wanted to talk to somebody about it. And back then there wasn't these kind of supports. Podcasts weren't that popular, and I don't think Instagram even existed. So I was out there on my own. And it's one of the reasons why I do these podcasts, because I know that there's people out there on their own trying to find their way. And if we can help them find their way, we can provide a little bit of support to them so they don't feel so alone, then we have accomplished our good deed for the day. And so that's where I'm coming from with this podcast. And when I talk about these memes, about doing the research and understanding the context in which people say these things, and then other people put it out there as if they're experts. Like this Eva Longoria is this expert in grief. She's not. Even I did a Google search on her name, and she came up with all these memes that people had made and sayings attributing to her, and that really resonated with people, and that is great. But that doesn't mean that it applies to us as grieving people. So I encourage you to do your research. And then understand yourself. So much of this journey is about understanding yourself and understanding how your life experiences are impacting how you're experiencing this journey of grief. Because whether we like it or not, it's not that our parents were bad. It's not that our parents did anything wrong, but we are shaped by our life experiences. And those experiences have both positive and negative effects. Because I also see that on Facebook too. Grow up, don't blame your parents. Well, it's not really about your parents. It's about the experiences, your environment, your social environment, your school environment. It's about environment. And those experiences shape how you experience grief. Or if you've had previous losses, that also impacts how you feel your grief and how you live your life. So going into the new year, so back to talking about the new year, for me it's going to look a little bit different. I'm not going to be blaming myself so much for things that I think I did wrong when it comes to Christopher. So when I'm browsing Facebook or I'm browsing Instagram and somebody has a quote up, it doesn't trigger me. I would like to live my life without experiencing triggers. I think that's an unrealistic goal, but it's one that I would like to have because I still felt it, right? So you read it, you feel it, and then I'm like, why did I feel that? And it took me a couple of days to research it because I was just doing other things. And my mind has been on the fact that it's a new year and we're going into one without our children. And so today was the day I sat down and looked at it, and I was like, And honestly, I didn't listen to, it's on YouTube, but I didn't listen to what Eva Longoria had to say because I wasn't interested. Because it didn't say anything about her opinion on death. It said it was her opinion on divorce. And divorce is a different type of experience than death. So the other thing that I'm going to try to work on with my grief is not this expectation of perfection. Do the rest of you have that? Do you ever wonder about, why do I feel the way I do? Like, why do I expect to be perfect in grief of all things? But I do. Because I really worry about what Christopher thinks of me. Do you guys worry about that? I worry that he might be, and I do believe that there's an all-loving place that they wait for us. It's called many different names, and I'm sure there's many different people from different religious backgrounds that are listening to me, so I would prefer not to label it. But I do believe that he's up there watching, and I also do believe that they come from a place of love. And if you come from a place of love, there's no judgment. And so I don't know why I fear that he's sitting up there judging me for what I say, when in reality, if I stick to my belief systems, he is not. Earthbound people are judging, but I don't believe he is. So I know that this transition from 2022 to 2023 is going to be tough for a lot of you. Take care of yourselves. Allow yourself to feel those feelings. I know they're hard. I know they're uncomfortable. But the more you allow yourself to feel, the better it will get. And it will take time and it will take years. But once you learn to cope with the unpleasantness, you learn to cope with how you feel. And by coping, I mean just allowing yourself to experience it. Like you talk about people with coping skills and they say, oh, well, take a bath, meditate, do all of those things. Those do help. Those do help. But it doesn't change the fact that you still have to experience them. And I think people look at coping skills and be like, okay, so if I do this, I won't feel this. Or if I do this, I won't feel that. And that is actually not the case. What it does is calm down the physiological response, which is those autonomic responses like the heavy breathing, the sadness, the crying. It calms those responses down. It calms the judgment, the conversation that you're having with yourself in your head. It calms that down. But it doesn't take away the feelings. The feelings are ones that you have to learn to sit with, to be there. And so that's what I want to leave you with on this podcast is you might see a lot of memes that are going to trigger you. Do the research. Find out if the person that wrote it, the person that said it, is someone whose opinion you value. If it's not an opinion you value, then throw it away. If it triggers you, look into your own background and figure out, why am I triggered by this? What message is in there that I'm responding to? And then coping with this transition from the new year to the old year. Just be at peace. If you need to cry, cry. There'll be days, I want to talk about this for a second. There'll be days when I'm going through life, it's like I'm operating on two different levels. And one level, I'm just going along. And on this other level, there's this deep, deep sadness where I feel like I could burst into tears at any moment. And that's what I mean by learning to live with grief. It's always there. It's always there. It's a deep well. And I just learned to sit with it. I've learned to carry it. And you can too. Well, we don't have any choice, do we? We carry it. We carry it with us every day. So I'm not going to say Happy New Year. I'm going to say welcome to 2023. We will get through 2023 just like we got through 2022. And each step we take will take us closer to our loved ones. Thanks for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you that take the time to listen to my podcast. This is Christy Haberman and Kai the Wonder Dog signing off. Have a good week.